Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our VBC Happy Hour. I am Todd.
Coming in
Hey,
tomorrow around 11.
you know what? Do you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to mute everybody.
Yeah, I picked that up today.
Which means Chad Riddle, we're hearing Chad's conversation, which is entertaining.
So,
Chad, you're very entertaining, but he's
No.
talking on the phone, so we'll mute him. And we'll mute as many people as I can. As you can see, I'm flying solo tonight. My name is Todd DiPasino. I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club. This was Sean's night, but we had a string of thunderstorms come through Pittsburgh. He's had no power all afternoon, so I am up. I'm batting. What am I? Not cleanup. I'm batting. No, I'm coming in for relief, right?
There you go.
Yeah,
Sounds
relief.
good.
Relief pitcher. Thank you, Christian.
Pinch hitter.
The pinch hitter.
Flying
That's what I was looking for. I'm a pinch hitter. Okay, so I'm a pinch hitter tonight, and this is our VBC Happy Hour. Veterans Breakfast Club is a nonprofit based here in Pittsburgh. We've been around for 14 years, having events where veterans share their stories with the public. And in 2020, we started doing these online events where people from all over the country and all over the world could join. And we just have veterans, we talk about news, we talk about veterans-oriented humor, history, and of course, stories. And we really like to focus on the veteran experience and service. I've just been having this interesting conversation with one of our guests tonight, Christian Clayton, who's joining us here from Western Pennsylvania. He's a local hero, and we're here to celebrate him tonight. And that's what we like to focus on, is just, veterans' experiences and stories from all eras, all ages, all backgrounds, all branches of service. You don't need to have enjoyed the service. You don't need to have liked it. You just need to have served. And we love having you. All right. So with that, I do want to say that we have open conversation, but I see a number of new people. Christian Clayton, who we'll get to. Hi, Christian. How are you? You're from Vandergrift, PA.
Yes, sir.
Christian is an Air Force veteran, a medic, and he saved a 10-month-old life a couple weeks ago. And we read about that, and it brought tears to my eyes. And we asked him if he could come on and maybe share a little bit about his service and tell that story. So thank you so much. Carol Vandenhend, it's so good to see you again. Thank you for joining us. Carol is an author. Carol, I'd rather ask you this question in private rather than in front of everybody, but I'll ask in front of everybody. Would you call yourself a romance novelist?
You know what? I think that what I write is more contemporary fiction with romantic elements. Yeah.
Got it. Because I know, you fiction writers, I'm a nonfiction writer, but you fiction writers can be pretty touchy about how you're categorized, just as we nonfiction writers are. We're all touchy. And I know there's a big difference between like the genre romance and then, literary fiction or contemporary fiction with romantic part of it. So that's how you would categorize. But you have a second book and a trilogy coming out. I'd love to have you talk about that. And then, I see Joe Griffiths. Joe Griffiths is a Vietnam veteran, disc jockey, very famous in New Jersey, especially around Ocean City, where he hosts a program called, I think, the Welcome Home Show, WIBG 101.3 FM. I believe that's it, in Ocean City. How are you, Joe? You could tell that Joe's in radio because he doesn't know how to unmute on Zoom. And I wouldn't know how to. There we go. All right.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Hey, Joe, how are you?
We're doing fine. Thank you for inviting us. These shows are very, very interesting. A lot of vets, a lot of people can learn an awful lot that we don't hear anywhere else, don't read in the paper. So thanks, Tom.
Well, I appreciate you joining us. It's great to have you come join us here.
How are you
and
doing?
you go. I'm going to mute you. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, sorry to wake you, but I just wanted to.
Oh, now we have Greg Yost private
and,
conversations. Greg, we could hear you. I'm going to mute you. There we go. Okay. And then we have Jack Bokey. Boy, Jack, are you with us here? You were on before. There you are, Jack. I am so honored that you're joining us. This is Jack Bokey. And thank you to Scott Masters for introducing us to Jack. Jack lives in Toronto. He was born in Rotterdam, Holland. He survived the early German invasion and bombardment of Holland. He went into hiding, of course, as a Jew, ended up escaping, narrowly missed capture several times, coming to the US, joining the US Army, returning to Europe as a counterintelligence soldier in World War II, tracking down war criminals. Jack Boeke is a Holocaust survivor. He's a US veteran. He's a real hero, and he's 97 years old. And I'm grateful that, Jack, you just said that you might drop in tonight, and I've been looking for you. So thank you for joining us. I don't know if you can unmute or not.
Nuclear power plant remains a perilous front line. Taking the news, Russia hitting the nearby village of Anedgorod last night, while Russia claims a strike punched this giant.
Yeah, I could really use. Okay, there we go. I'm just going around on muting.
Yeah, I just unmuted.
Hey, Jack, how are you?
I am fine. I'm still alive at 98.
98. Oh my. Well, and Jack, I would like to just have a little conversation with you tonight here on this program. I know that we're going to have you back on for a fuller focus, because we like to do our homework, and I would like to read more about you and get to know more about your story. So we'd like to have you back on, but would also like you to share just a little bit with us tonight, if you can, after we talk to some other vets and make a few announcements. Can you hang on for?
I'd be happy to do that. Most happy to do that.
Thank you, Jack. And thank you, Scott Masters, history teacher in Toronto, Canada's greatest history teacher, for connecting me with Jack. This is, it's not often that you get to talk to real heroes like this. Thank you, Jack, for joining us. Let me first let people know that we are the Veterans Breakfast Club. I'm Todd DiPastino. I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club. And one thing that we do is we have sponsors for our programs. Well, I'm going to let Michael in here. And we have a sponsor for tonight's program, which is tobacco-free Adagio Health. They are, oh boy, here we go. Sorry about this, folks. There we go. All right. Here we go. Tobacco-free Adagio Health. We are very grateful to Tobacco-free Adagio Health. They are a healthcare system that has many aspects. We're working with them about sponsoring different programs that the Veterans Breakfast Club do, and also having them share more information about the different programs that they have that relate to veterans, especially women veterans. But one line of programming they have is tobacco-free Adagio Health, where they encourage people to quit, and they help to plan a future where we do not have so much tobacco use. And they advocate for those kind of policies. You could find out more about tobacco-free Adagio Health at tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. And of course, we also have D&D Auto Salvage. They're a junkyard that is now a state-of-the-art recycling facility, auto salvage and metal recycling. They deal with corporations, they deal with individuals, they deal with small businesses. If you have metal that you want to recycle, if you have a car that you want to scrap, if you have car parts that you want to get, you go to D&D Auto Salvage, and you can check out more by going to dndautosalvage.com. That's dndautosalvage.com. And one thing that I'm grateful to D&D for is that they sponsored our big event that we had at the Edgeworth Club in Sewickley here in Western Pennsylvania on Friday night. We billed it as a 4 Heroes of World War II dinner, and it turns out we lost one. Mart Cohn, 102-year-old Holocaust survivor from Los Angeles, could not make it. She was fine, but she needed to stay in Los Angeles to take care of her younger husband who had hurt his leg. So she could not make it. So it was 4 Heroes of World War II -1 and then +7. So we actually had 10 World War II veterans with us that we celebrated them and heard their stories. It was a heck of a lot of fun. I thought I'd show you their pictures here. This is them gathered for a picture. This was Howard Pfeiffer, the only merchant mariner, member of the Merchant Marine, who was there, who shared his story. There's Vince Speranza, who was kind of our headliner, 101st Airborne Division, fought at the Battle of the Bulge, became famous in Europe for filling helmets of beer to serve to the wounded. And then Warren Goss, of course, was with us, our very own Utah Beach D-Day man who landed on D-Day. And here he is pictured with Margot Marty, who joined us. She's French. She's a reenactor. We had a lot of fun with her. I thought I'd just share with you, these are the other veterans who kind of shared their stories. Mike Scuro talked about sneaking home to Pittsburgh during basic training. We have Isla Cole, who was a Navy wave. She was there. We had Howard, whose pictures I showed you. He served on the Murmansk run and sailed around the world with the Merchant Marine in World War II. We had Bob Buckler, who was quite a story. He flew 22 and a half missions as a B-17 tail gunner in World War II. He said you serve half a mission by leaving and not coming back. In his case, he was shot down, but they were able to ditch in Sweden, and he spent a glorious year in Sweden. He admitted to having girlfriends in Sweden. He lived at a resort, and he had a good old time until the Army Air Corps told him he had to go back home, and he was very disappointed. So he shared that Pat Doherty was an entertainer with the USO. She shared her story. She is spry and lively as ever at age 97 now. Guy Prestia, 100 years old, served in 511 days in combat with the 45th Infantry Division from North Africa all the way through to Germany. Warren Goss, as I mentioned, landed on D-Day ahead of the first wave, clearing mines with the 531st Special Brigade. And Julia Parsons, Navy Wave, she is our code breaker. Julia usually joins us here. Julia, are you with us this evening? I'll have to check. And May Cryer, who is not a veteran, but she was Rosie the Riveter, and she was instrumental in getting women workers in World War II a Congressional Gold Medal. She's absolutely terrific. We're going to have her on again separately also. Boy, was she a lot of fun to talk to. And then Vince Speranza, I think he stole the show as a charismatic 101st Airborne Division vet who fought at Bastogne and shared that story. So it was a wonderful evening. We're very grateful to everybody who showed up, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. So that's it. Do we have anybody else who hasn't joined us before, who is here for the first time, who has something to announce, something to share, that might want to make an announcement? Ron Gianta, thank you so much for joining us. I know you always have news from the VA, and you shared a wonderful presentation on the Camp Lejeune water contamination issue, as well as the PAC Act. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Todd. And Julia Parsons is here. Hi, Julia. Are you recovered from Friday night? We have your darn microphone deal working again. Just to let people know, Julia is a Navy Wave, 101 years old. She was wonderful in sharing her story at our event on Friday night. All right. Any other announcements? Yes, Henry Shepke, I will share you information with the World War II vets with you. All right, well, let's jump right in. Let's jump right in then. First with Carol. Hello, Carol. Hello again. Thank you for joining us. You remember, Carol, you joined us earlier this year because of your book, Orchid Blooming, a novel, not a romance novel, but a literary fiction that has romance in it. And it doesn't have to do with veterans. You're not a veteran. And yet it's a novel that speaks very much, I think, to anybody who's experienced the trauma of war and been changed by it physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. This was the first of a trilogy. The second book is Goodbye Orchid, which is just out. I know that you'll want to say a few things about it, but I want to let people know, some people might be wondering, why the heck you having Carol on? She's not a veteran. These books aren't about veterans. You should see the people who review it, though, and who have read it. One is Doc Jacobs. And Doc, those of you who were at our Penn Hills breakfast earlier this year met Doc Jacobs. He was in Pittsburgh, and he came to our breakfast and spoke. And what a wonderful, fascinating, terrific, my heart went out to this guy. He lost a leg in combat and came back to serve. He was actually the first amputee permitted to serve again after the loss of his left leg. And he gave this review of your book. As a combat and decorated and wounded veteran, I was truly captivated by Carol's storytelling. Phoenix Walker, who's a character in your book, captures the mindset, roller coaster, and daily heroics of my experience after being injured. All around excellence. Carol, what connects you to veterans?
People often ask what inspires my writing, and it has been combat wounded veterans. And that's why my work aims to raise money for USA Cares to help military veterans and their families. And that quote you just showed from Doc Jacobs is so meaningful to me. In addition to that, he actually said to me that reading Goodbye Orchid deepened his understanding of his own experience. He says that when he looks at his 11 months he spent at Walter Reed Medical Hospital, he thinks about it from his perspective and what he went through.
Yep.
But that because Goodbye Orchid was written in multiple points of view after Phoenix was injured, after he spent time in the hospital in rehab. And so for the first time, actually, Doc said to me that he started thinking about what the experience must have been like for his dad and his Gma, his grandma, who were at his bedside during that entire experience, and how emotional it must have been and how difficult it was for them as it was for him. And because Goodbye Orchid tells the experience from Phoenix Walker's perspective, but also his mother's perspective, his twin brother's perspective, that it opened his eyes to seeing how it actually can traumatize and can affect everyone in that veteran, in that person's life.
And that's one thing that literature does, or that writing can do. It has a power to broaden your perspective. I mean, we're all caught up in our own worlds and our own dramas and our own story, and to be able to kind of step back and kind of look at yourself, or the human condition, an aspect of yourself, from another perspective, is what really good writing does, I think.
It's true. And the writing came from a place of empathy. In fact, another veteran who has endorsed these books is Brian Anderson, Sergeant Brian Anderson. And he talks about his story in his memoir. So you can read about it, but he actually says that when his Humvee was blown up, that his guys pulled him out of the car so fast, and he's laying in this dusty Iraq street. And he looks down, even though they tried to push his head down so he couldn't see. And he saw that in that instant, the IED had taken both his legs and his left hand. And his thought that ran through his mind was, life is going to be different.
Yeah.
But his really, when I say combat wounded veterans inspired my writing and continues to inspire my writing, it's because the strength and resilience that Doc, that Brian, and that so many others, including the people on this call, I feel so honored to be among you. And that's really what inspires me, that strength, that resilience, the will to go through any obstacle or challenge is truly incredible. And I'm
sorry. Let me quote from a couple other reviews, and these are not professional reviews. These are reviews I'm a little ashamed to say that I picked not quite at random, but almost at random from Amazon. And man, do you have a lot of reviews, which means you have a lot of readers, which means you know how to market your book, which means you're smart. And that's, in other words, you are finding your readers. And I think a lot of your readers are veterans. And these two reviews to me just speak to a book that I would find very, not just interesting, but very important. Here's one by Molly's Mom. That's not your mom, is it, Carol? All right, Molly's Mom. Heartbreaking. Goodbye Orchid breaks your heart and slowly puts it back together again. What a wonderful way to put it. Carol Van Den Hende creates a love story and so much more with her perfectly flawed characters, Phoenix and Orchid. Despair and the most profound sorrow are intricately paired with strength and tenacity in a manner few authors can achieve. And the question arises, who gets to decide how much one person can bear? An excellent story of resilience and strength and love. Always there is love. Breaking your heart and putting it back together again. It's kind of like a really good literature can kind of rehearse or represent trauma and recovery. right? Is that what you're trying to get at in the series, trauma and recovery?
Absolutely. It's meant to impart both hope for people who are going through challenging times, who are dealing with trauma, as well as deepen empathy for people who haven't been through those experiences. And like Goodbye Orchid has done that for physical disability and has been awarded for disability awareness, Orchid Blooming, which is releasing in 2 weeks, is shining a light on PTSD and the trauma that Orchid Page, the main character of the book, experiences as a child, follows her into adulthood and shapes how she thinks about everything in her life.
Can you give us an overview of the story so that people can, get a grasp of what you're talking about?
Absolutely. So Orchid Page, 27-year-old half Asian who's an executive in the beauty industry, as a child, she'd witnessed the death of her parents. And that's the experience that really she carries into adulthood and she continues to deal with. In order to try to honor her mom's memory, she wants to win a work trip to be able to go to China and be able to pay homage to her mother. The way to do so is to get experience. And this entrepreneur she meets, handsome Phoenix Walker, is somebody who can give her that experience. But yet his work, he actually helps, he has nonprofit work that is showing, really showing what military veterans go through. That's his nonprofit work. And that work, incredibly meaningful to him, incredibly meaningful to her. However, it triggers her PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And she has to decide if she can overcome her vulnerabilities to be able to have this chance at a happily ever after. So that is book 1, Orchid Blooming. The book's actually released out of order, so that might be confusing. But book 2, Goodbye Orchid, then picks up on the story in which Phoenix is injured in an accident that changes him forever, which mirrors the arc of a combat wounded veteran. And when he wakes in the hospital, he is thinking about Orchid and he's longing for her. But he also remembers her sensitivity to trauma. He looks down the hospital bed and feels he's become that very image of trauma and is therefore faced with the hardest decision of his life. Whether to love Orchid, he needs to leave her without explaining why. Sometimes readers ask me, is this a realistic scenario? It reminds them of An Affair to Remember, if anybody remembers that story or that movie. But it actually absolutely can happen. And in fact, Brian Anderson, who I spoke about earlier, writes about it in his memoir, that when he woke in his hospital bed realizing he had lost 3 limbs, that his girlfriend was contacting him, emailing him, wanting to come see him. And he said no. He told his mother, do not let her come. I want her to remember me the way I was.
Right. This is Carol Van den Hens. You need to have a simpler name, Carol.
I do. It's a Dutch last name. And in fact, yeah, I mean, Rotterdam got me so excited when you were talking about Rotterdam earlier. So when Jack speaks, I hope I get a chance to chat with him because my in-laws live in Rotterdam.
Do they really? Your in-laws live in Rotterdam?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yes.
How interesting. Oh, yeah, you'll definitely want to hear Jack. This is Carol's website, carolvandenhend.com. You can find out more about the books. I didn't realize that the book was coming out in 2 weeks. I thought it was already out. And I know the 3rd in the trilogy is due next year, correct?
Correct. There's going to, the 3rd,
is
very
it finished?
Emotional.
Is it finished?
There's a draft that's done. It's going through edits. Since you're a fellow author, I'm sure you understand that process. Yes.
Right. Is your editor harass you to get pages to her?
So far, so good. There's not been harassment yet.
All right. Very good. Carol, thank you so much for checking in with us and sharing more about the book. When it does come out, we'll definitely share information on it. And I just love how it reaches veterans and connects to veterans. And I think, resonates. I mean, that's a word that really fits here because it's something that I think veterans can understand and feel when they read your book. The point of it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Hey, Christian Clayton.
Yes.
Thank you for your patience here. Christian is joining us from.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, she's interesting.
Yeah, it was.
We get a lot of interesting people come our way.
I see that.
And you're one of them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Before we get to the reason we have you on, actually, Don Nemchik, I think you're on here tonight. I think you're the first one. Several people shared that article about you, Christian, that was in our local paper here, the Tribune Review. Don, I think, was the first, and he said, "Get this man on." Don Nemchek, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Todd. Good evening.
I think you have some words to say to Christian.
Well, Christian, I do. I viewed your segment on the news, and I read about it in the paper, of course. And as a fellow veteran, I was so warmed because I knew somehow that your Air Force training took over immediately, and you were able to save that young boy's life. This old sailor salute you, and I just thank you for coming on board today with us to tell more of your story and for us to get to know you as well. We hope to see you again, Christian. Welcome.
I appreciate that. I salute you back.
Oh man, I tell you, yeah, when I saw the title, I thought, okay, this is a good story. And then it said you're a vet. And I said, yes, this is great. This is absolutely. And not only that, but your training has something to do with saving lives. Let's cover the story first. Tell us what happened. What happened on that day just a couple of weeks ago in Vandergrift?
Well, it was a day that normally our football organization, which is Kiski Valley Youth Football Organization, we're normally not in the park that time of day. We're usually there in the evenings. But every year in the summer, we do a couple-day camp that we run during the day, and we're there from 8 in the morning till about 5 in the evening. So we're there all during the day, and we just happened to be there on that. It was Monday, and we were actually on break from one of our practices, and me and my coaches were sitting underneath a tent, and we're just sitting there conversating. Our boys were getting some water, and we kept hearing "help me" in the background, and one of my coaches were on his phone. So one of the other coaches says, "Is that coming from your phone?" And he shook his head and said, "Yeah." So we just thought that was it. We heard it again. I looked over at my team. Everybody was good. And then it got really loud. Someone said, "Somebody help me." So I stood up, and I happened to look over, and the lady screams, "Help me, he's not breathing." So when she said that, I just immediately started running towards her. She was about 40, 50 yards away. And when I got to her, she was coming off of her porch. I took the baby from her, and then, like instinct and training, all that just kicked in. And it was definitely scary because I was doing the child Heimlich on him, and I had done the Heimlich before, so I know when something releases. And after about 10 back thrusts, I knew like something's not right. It's not releasing. And Mom said something about he was playing with a bottle cap, a plastic bottle cap is what it was. So I put my finger in his mouth, and I could feel it in the back of his mouth, but I really couldn't reach it. So again, I went in, and I went as far back as I could, and I can get to the side of it and kind of like just like pressed it up against the other side, and it popped out. And the baby let off a gasp and started crying, and started trying to catch his breath, and mom collapsed. It was a crazy scene at the time. And come to find out, which is even more of a blessing that we were there, is the child had actually had a condition where he had a cleft throat. Which, that wasn't told in the story. He had a cleft throat, so nothing was going to make that come out, because he had what it is he had a hole in his throat, and the cap fit perfectly. It lodged itself perfectly in that hole, and he's due to get surgery on that when he gets a little older. But as of right now, they hadn't done the surgery. So that thing had so it was like placed in there to the point where it was like a perfect fit. So it was definitely a blessing that we were there, and it was good to see. They live right across the street from where we practice. So actually, the other night we were out there practicing, and the dad brought him over and was holding him, watching our practice. So that was nice to see.
Oh, that's so great! What a wonderful thing. So I mean, I could imagine that doing a Heimlich on a baby can do real damage if you don't do it right.
Right.
I mean, you could really hurt that child.
Right. Right.
And you
I-
knew how to do it.
Yes, I knew how to do it from training, plenty of class, like my military training. You know, I was trained as a medic, so I got it real early, paramedic school and everything else. And every job that I've had since, I've had to renew my first aid, CPR. So I always kept up to date with it, and it came in handy.
I
It came in
love-
handy.
I was just going to say, I love the part of the story where somebody said that baby crying was the sweetest sound I ever heard.
Yeah, it definitely
gosh.
was. It definitely was.
Let me ask you about your service. You served in the Air Force from 1995 to 1999. Why did you
Yes.
join?
It's a funny story how I did join, because I always was interested in the military. And one of my childhood friends that lived across the street from me, we would always play jokes on each other. And so we had what they call at our school like a career day, and they would bring different careers, you know, from doctors to military to police officers. They bring them in, you meet with them, and they talk to you and everything. Well, I didn't go to any of the military ones, to be honest with you. I didn't go to any of them. Well, he went to them and he signed my name up for all of them, saying how interested I was to join. So I started getting stuff in the mail, and then an Air Force recruiter showed up to my school. And at the time, like I played high school football, I was an average, decent player. So when they told me there was a recruiter in the office, I'm like, a recruiter? I'm thinking for football. You know what I mean? So when I get down there, it's a guy with the Air Force uniform, and I'm looking at him. He's like, yeah. He said, yeah, we had this meeting scheduled. And I'm like, no. He was like, yeah, well, someone scheduled you for this meeting. He said, well, I have you. Your office has approved you to be here. So, you know, instead of going back to class, why don't you just listen to what I have to say? So he started talking to me and telling me everything. And I was interested. You know what I mean? Like I said, I had thought about it before, but just I didn't know what I was going to do after high school. So when I sat down with him and I started to talk to him, I was like, you know, it's something that I'm interested in. And so I met with him again, and then I met again with him with my mom, and that's how it happened. So.
And what did your mom have to say about you joining the Air Force?
She was all for it. She was all for it. She was proud. She was very proud. So
good. And you did your basic at Lackland.
Yes.
And how was that? Was there any culture shock there?
Culture shock? No. It was hot. It was very hot. But no, not a culture shock.
Okay, you didn't mind getting yelled at, in other words, basic training.
Like I said, I played sports all my life.
Right.
So you know what I mean? That football every year, and you know, so that it was the first night when we first pulled up, and the bus dropped us off at the barracks, and we're all standing in, you know, in formation, and they start going. It was a little like, oh, okay, this is real. This is real. You know what I mean? But after the first couple of days, I settled in pretty good. So.
Larry Woods, a Vietnam Air Force veteran, says, impressive, Christian, Air Force proud. Brad Washabaugh, retired colonel in the United States Marine Corps, says, what a shame he did not talk to the Marine recruiter first. I think you got lucky, Christian.
Hey, I'm going to tell you right now, I think I got lucky too. If I had to do it all over again, I'd do Air Force again.
Good. Yeah, smart man.
Yeah.
What made you want to become a medic?
It was just one of those things that I was interested in. Like when as I said, when I took my ASVAB test, and they gave me all the jobs that I was qualified for, and that was one of the jobs that stood out to me. Just, you know, as a kid growing up, my mom always worked she worked with mental health patients and stuff. So, you know, it was just always something that I thought that I might like. You know what I mean? So. And
you don't mind the sight of blood. You don't mind the emergency kind of situations.
No, not at all. Not at all.
That takes a special person, I think. Chad Riddle says, why not the Navy?
Hey, I love them all. I love them all, but I think I picked the right one though. I'm confident in that. I'm confident in that.
And you liked it enough that after 4 years you re-upped, right? For
Yes,
another.
I did. Yes, I did. I re-upped, and I was ready to do another 4. And at that time when I re-upped, I was thinking more career. I was thinking, this 4 more years, and I'm thinking right now, I'm thinking it's going to be a career. That's what I was thinking to myself. And things changed. Things changed kind
Things
of quick.
changed, and I want people to listen to this because I think this is so interesting. This is 1999. You ended up getting a medical discharge because of a pretty serious allergy that the Air Force discovered you had that was not common at the time, but now is very well known. Could you talk about it?
Yes. So I found out that I was allergic to latex. And the way I found out, like I was telling you earlier, I was doing a medical procedure where it was a sterile pack that I was opening. So I washed up. I had always avoided using powdered gloves because it would irritate my hands, and I would feel like it just irritated me. That's all I thought about it. They irritated me, so I didn't use them. Well, when I opened the sterile pack, there were powdered gloves in there, and I didn't want to leave out and have to re-scrub and everything. So I just went ahead and did the procedure, and I had a light rash, started sneezing. They sent me to the emergency room and then later sent me for allergy tests and found out that I was allergic to the latex. And being that I was allergic to the latex, they determined that I wasn't worldwide qualified, meaning I couldn't go anywhere where they couldn't guarantee me that I couldn't be sent somewhere remote or otherwise that they would have non-latex to treat me in case of an emergency. So that determined that I was not worldwide qualified.
And I've never heard that before. Worldwide qualified.
Yes.
So you could have used some other kind of glove, but because you couldn't be trusted to be able to be treated.
I mean, at the end of the day, everything happens for a reason, and right. my life I have tons of blessings that, probably came from that situation. But yes, if I would have used a different pair of gloves, it could have been a different story. My life would have probably been a little different.
Christian, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your life right now? You have a family and you work for People's Gas?
Yes, I work for People's Gas. I have 4 children. I have 3 girls and a boy. And I coach football, coach basketball. I stay busy. I'm here now because I didn't have any commitments today. So
I was just going to say,
today was a good day. Day.
This is like the half hour that you have free with 4 kids coaching and working.
Yes,
and
yes.
I'm so grateful that you joined us, Christian. I hope you find time, maybe when your kids are grown or maybe, in between times, you could join us again because I told you before we started here that we've had people want to buy you a drink. We had somebody who's not a veteran wanted to pay for your ticket to our event on Friday. I know that we have people who want to buy you breakfast at one of our breakfast events. So anytime you can make it, would love to have you. I don't know if we have your email or, mailing address. But
Sean has my phone number and my email. So
okay, good.
If you guys please keep me posted on all activity. I really enjoyed these last 30 minutes that I've been on here. Enjoyed the story before mine, and I really like what you guys are doing. So I'm very, very interested, and I definitely will be back.
Well, God bless you, Christian, and thank you for the work you do on behalf of the community, and certainly on behalf of that baby whose life you saved. You should be very proud of yourself, and we're very proud of you, and we're grateful that you joined us.
Thank you.
All right, take care, Christian.
You too.
Hey, before we get to Jack, here's a question that came in from Betty Karleski. In these open conversations, we have these kind of weird questions and topics that we ask. And one of them, it came from Betty Karleski, and it's this. Maybe Jack could answer. Jack, you're a World War II veteran.
Yeah.
Why didn't soldiers fasten their helmet chin straps in World War II? Simple question. And it's true. You look at any picture of World War II. Now, this guy has it strapped. This is the 25th Infantry Division in the Solomon Islands. He does not have it strapped. These guys, they don't even have, this is the 92nd Infantry Division, the all black infantry division in Italy. These guys didn't even have chin straps. Here's guys with the chin straps hanging. Jack, why didn't you guys wear chin straps?
I don't know. I never had a chin strap at all. I had the strap that sat on the top of the helmet, but we never used it. Never. I never used it. Not even in basic training when we had to jump. Somehow the weight of the helmet stayed on our head.
And I think that's it. So Jack, that strap that was on top of your helmet, that was where you put it temporarily to put it out of the way. And I think you were supposed to. No, then.
It's set at the front.
Oh, in the front, that front strap.
It was the front strap. It was a strap, but I never used it. I don't even know where it was for.
And the only time you ever in World War II see guys with it strapped is
if you look at the second guy, you can see the strap sitting on you see it right there. There's the strap.
Right. Now, these guys have it strapped because they're about to land at Anzio. And by the way, this is a fairly well-known photo. This is our own Al DeFazio, who died earlier this year. He came to our Penn Hills breakfast. He was on that landing craft in the 36th Infantry Division. Brad Washaball, you have your hand up.
Yeah, the helmet, there's actually two helmets there, Todd. There's a helmet liner, which is like fiberglass, and that has that front strap. That holds to the helmet. And then you have a chin strap that comes down, of course, and can be buckled or opened, either one. So there's actually two straps, and I don't know the reason why.
I never had a chin strap. Never.
You never even had one attached to your helmet at all?
No.
Hey, Todd.
Yeah.
I read something online once that the reason why a lot of soldiers in World War II did not use their chin straps is because of the fact of the danger of either being strangled or being hurt by the buckle for the strap itself, especially like if you're involved in like an attack where there's a concussion or something and it would like try to blow the helmet off your head. If you've got it strapped, it could possibly hurt your neck. And that's why a lot of soldiers did not buckle their chin straps. I read that.
Todd. This is Glenn. Yes. I've heard exactly the same thing and read exactly the same thing. Worried about the concussive effect of a mortar or artillery shell nearby and it strangling them.
Really?
Yeah. That's what I've read. How accurate it is, I'm not sure, but I've read it.
That's good. Because I just assumed it was because it looks cool. Look how cool these guys look. They look a lot cooler than, here, I'll show you. Well, and same with Korean, Vietnam. Here's Vietnam vets. They didn't do it either. These guys, no, they're there. They look like Air Mobile, no chin strap. These guys even brought guitars with them into combat, which is a lot of fun. Now this guy's wearing he kind of looks like nerdy.
Yeah, he has a chin strap.
Yeah, he has a chin strap. Looks like a helmet chin strap. Hey, and now look how bad these guys look. Come on.
Yeah.
82nd Airborne,
Airborne almost always have their straps.
Yeah, Airborne has
Airborne has their straps.
Hey Todd, I don't want to introduce any inter-service rivalry here, but typically the Marines will wear their chin strap a little looser, and you can always pick out an Army officer, particularly a West Pointer, that has a chin strap so tightly fastened to their chin, they can hardly talk. They're like this all the time. But you'll see the Marines with a loose chin strap, and okay, let the fight begin. Thank you.
So is the consensus then, from what Glenn and Ron said, is that it was found that the chin strap actually was a danger? It actually could hurt a soldier. Jim Roberts, yes, you had your hand up.
I've read the same thing too, but I also read that they did various tests and it was really false. That it was a common belief but the testing showed that it wouldn't happen. I don't know about being in hand-to-hand combat if someone pulled the helmet off the back of your head, as far as that's concerned. But I'm not sure it's a true situation.
Jim, did you wear a chin strap in Vietnam?
The only time we wore the helmet was when we were being attacked in base camp. In the boonies, we wore floppy hat.
You wore floppy hats. You did not wear a helmet. Why? Too hot?
No, because the regular shape of the helmet is much easier to see in jungle foliage than the irregular shape of a floppy hat.
Hey. So that's really interesting because I used to teach it differently. Because people would say, I showed pictures in my college class that I would teach on the Vietnam War of, guys in the single file out in the jungle in Vietnam. And students would ask, why aren't they wearing helmets? And I would say, oh, they're too hot. What do I know? I gave them an answer. That was not the right answer.
Not from where we were. I mean, the American units, if you look at their pictures, they're wearing helmets, and a lot of the units wore flak jackets. We wore the flak jacket and the steel pot when we were taking incoming and being attacked with small arms fire from camp.
Right.
But we wore floppy hats, and the idea was to not have any sort of regular shape that would stand out through jungle foliage if you happen to be that close to the enemy.
That's so interesting. If you notice the pictures of, like, say, the Marines at Quezon, they're all wearing helmets. They're all wearing flak jackets because they're just taking incoming all the time. Peter Thens, how are you?
Good, Todd. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah, just my 2 cents on it, because I actually wore a steel pot in basic training, and then when I went to Germany, I got issued the first Kevlar, the Kevlar helmets that they come out with. The one thing with the steel pots, keep in mind, they were dual function. I mean, when we went to the field, we used them to shave and everything.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that with your Kevlar. God, it's just escaped me what they're called now, because eventually it became the ACHs and stuff. So you only took it off to take it off. You couldn't use it to put water in and shave or anything like that. And the other thing too is, as time progressed on, we started, now see the guy right there in the front, he's got a bracket on the front of his helmet.
Yes.
Okay. You walked around with this bracket on, sometimes NVGs on. You had to have the strap on, otherwise the damn thing fell down in front of your face.
Okay.
So, and then keep in mind that concussion protocols too, that's the reason why they come up with these new helmets. You had to have it fitting you correctly, so that if you did fall or get shot at or anything like that, you started running, you didn't want it bobbing and waving around on your head, like,
it had to be
make sure it was fixed on your head right. Yeah.
It had to be fitted correctly. When I first put a old steel pot helmet on my head for the first time, I was stunned by how heavy it was. I think I can't remember how heavy it is, but it seems heavy on your head. Are these Kevlar helmets lighter?
No,
they're not.
And then put the bracket and an NVG on it, and no, not at all.
Okay. Well, I've got other questions too, but I thought, oh, hey, I'm looking here. T-Bug, how are you? Speak up if you want, T-Bug. I don't think I've met you. You put a comment here in the chat. Let's see, T-Bug, if you want to say, T-Bug says, speaking from a former football player, chin straps are also very uncomfortable in hot weather. And I thought that would be a case. And they chafe your chin, at least from a comfort standpoint. That's true. Ben Wright. Ben, you say aircrew fasten their helmets to their heads with their oxygen masks. And
it's oxygen mask. You had a strap that you always had on too, but mostly is held on by your mask, which comes under your chin, and you have these bayonet connectors that were in. But you did have a chin strap also. You didn't want to lose it if you had to eject or something like that.
Okay, Pat Hughes here. Let me see. Let me go back. I think go back to that. Okay, I'm going to go back to a picture and have you explain it a little bit, because you put something in the chat here about these black soldiers with the 92nd Infantry Division in World War II. Pat, explain what they're wearing. They're these MPs.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
those are helmet liners. In other words, and they're usually basically for ceremonial purposes. In this case, they certainly are as military police. Now, they would have a steel pot as well, but certainly, as you so alluded, they're heavy and cumbersome. But I can tell you right now, in a combat situation, you want that helmet, that steel pot, and also when you're in the field in harm's way, that steel pot will also be valuable, as one gentleman alluded to, for shaving and heat, even heating food and water and carrying water. There's a multiple reason why you want that steel pot in a field environment. But these are ceremonial primarily. I don't know what look like. There's a general review in those troops. It would appear, but I'm not sure.
I think that's exactly it. And you're so right that those are, I mean, now I look at it a little more closely and you can see that it's the helmet liner. It's the plastic or fiberglass or whatever it was, part of the second
fiberglass.
Fiberglass that goes inside.
Fiberglass, yeah.
Hey, Todd, for the longest time, the MP units, what they did was, and this was up till probably, oh God, because I was an MP for many years. This was probably up till, I want to say at least 2010, maybe. You'd have the helmet liners MP, because you could easily see it. All the soldiers standing there, you could easily tell who the MPs were. And then they'd have the unit decals on the side. And
shit.
Honestly,
damn place.
Jesus Christ. Sorry about that. This is a family program, but every once in a while we have some.
Yeah, we used to say that when we drop it and it gets scratched, because what I was going to say was the only thing that sucked about those was in guard mount, if they weren't highly polished up or cleaned up or whatever, it was just something additional you got dinged for,
Right. Had to be polished up.
Had to look pretty. Yep.
Had to look pretty. Roger Junt, you were a scout dog handler? If you could speak up a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Wow, you wrote, working as a scout dog handler, the steel pot worked well to feed your dog in the jungle.
Yes.
There you are. Roger, you don't have a camera, do you?
I do, but I guess I don't have it on working right here.
Okay, well, we can't see your pretty face, but I want to ask you just a little bit. How did you become a dog handler, and when were you a dog handler? Army, I take it?
Yeah, I was an Army scout dog handler in 1969 and 70. I went to school in Fort Benning, Georgia. Went through the on-leash and off-leash portion, 5 months working the same dog, and then on to Vietnam as a point man with the first Cavalry Division.
What does a point man do with the dog?
You're working point. You're an early silent warning. You're working the dog for early detection of punji pits, trip wires, snipers, and ambushes. But you're walking point. You're walking point in the column. You're basically an infantryman that you went on to scout dog school. So your primary MOS is an infantryman, but you're then become a 11B2D as a scout dog handler.
11B2D. Yeah. Roger, that sounds like a horrible job that you don't last long at.
Yeah, it's a pretty dangerous job, when you're on the front of a column like that. So, but the dogs work really well. So, yeah.
Could we have you on sometime to talk more about about dog handling in Vietnam? I just think it's
sure. Yeah.
You get very attached to the dogs, I would take it, right?
Yes, very much so. We had in Vietnam and in Thailand, we had over 4,000 military working dogs between all the branches of service. And only 204 of those dogs made it back to the US. And the dog that I handled, King, he was one of the lucky 204 that made it back.
Whoa.
So right now in South Lyons, Michigan, they have a wall, a granite wall, a lot like the Vietnam Wall in DC, that has the names and the tattoo numbers of all the service dogs that never returned from Vietnam. It's quite a sight down there in South Lyons, Michigan, the Michigan War Dog Memorial.
So Michigan,
yeah, very sad deal. Most of those dogs in Vietnam were either euthanized or given to the South Vietnamese Army. And of course, you know what happened to them from there.
The Michigan,
the ones that,
yeah. I'm looking up the Michigan War Dog Memorial right now, just so I could show folks a picture of it.
Yeah.
Wow, is that neat? Boy, that is a real wall.
Yeah,
here,
I've got one dog that I handle is on that wall. Kaiser 977 Alpha. He was given to the South Vietnamese Army, so he was one of the dogs that, you know, one that never returned.
Oh, how neat. What a great thing. All right. I'll look forward to reading more about the Michigan War Dog Memorial. What a great thing. And Roger, I will be in contact. I'd love to have you on to talk about your experiences, maybe with other dog handlers too, because I just think as a dog lover, I'm very interested in the subject. Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, one more question before we go to Jack Boki. Did your dog drink and eat before you did?
In the field, we would carry like, as a scout dog handler, your mission was usually like a 4-day mission. You were on a roster at our rear facility, and then as they called for dog handlers, the different units, and you would go out. So you were like on a 4-day mission. Usually, sometimes it exceeded that. If the jungle was too dense, you couldn't get out in a certain, you know, on your time you were supposed to. But we carried horse meat and like a Gainsburger that we would feed them. So yeah, when we would set up for the evening, the dog would eat first, you know, in my case anyway.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, that steel pot worked really well to feed the dog, but I didn't use a helmet like they were talking earlier, just use that we call the boonie cap, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of times I would just wear that. They were a lot more comfortable. So.
Oh, how interesting, Roger. These stories are so fascinating to me. And here's another shot of the Vietnam Canine Memorial Wall. We could talk about that again later. Jack Boki, how are you?
Yeah, I am fine, Todd. I am exactly also honored to be invited here and be among my buddies, my GIs, my vets. I feel very much at home.
You know, it's funny because you're certainly a vet, absolutely, but you're so much more than that. You're a Holocaust survivor. You're a resistor. You know, you're somebody who went through way more than most of your comrades did.
Yeah, well, that's true. I was born in the Netherlands when the Germans invaded in 1940. I was 16 years old. And to make a very long story short, I escaped the Nazis 10 times. And it sounds very incredible, but I again, in my mind, I go back to the times when the Germans were in Holland. I escaped them 10 times. I escaped them to France, in Paris, and in Paris I became involved with the well, I usually don't talk about it, but the OSS. I don't know if you're familiar with the OSS. The OSS stands for the Office of Strategic Services, which at the time that I was in Paris was the spy organization that the United States operated in Europe.
Yep. Yes.
I will later on, I will tell you how I became involved with them. I did work for them. I spied. I hate to talk about it being a spy, but in fact, that's what I was. And
why do you hate to talk about it,
I don't know. It gives me, I don't know. I tell you why. Because in my earlier days, when people asked me what happened to you during the war, and I told them what happened during the war, and I looked at their faces and they didn't believe me.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. I can imagine that. Right.
The things that happened to me are incredible.
Yeah.
So when I talked about it, the people, I could see it on their face. They said, "Oh, this guy, he's making up stories." But I did not. It's really true what happened to me. I mean, if I tell you, I escaped 9 times. 9 times. The first time that I escaped from the Nazis was out of my overcoat. I escaped out of my overcoat.
How do you mean? Somebody grabbed your coat and you wiggled your way out of it?
Somebody arrested me on the train, and forced me out of the streetcar. And he was walking next to me, and I was 16 years old, and I said to myself, "This is not going well. I don't know what's going to happen to me." And I had in my right hand a little briefcase. And he was, as I said again, he was walking next to me on the left side. And I said to myself, I gotta go, I gotta do something. And he sensed it.
Yeah.
He sensed that I was going to do something.
Yeah.
And his right hand shot out on my shoulder, grabbed my shoulder. I stumbled. I fell to the floor, to the ground, because my briefcase got in between my legs, and that's why I fell. And he fell on top of me. And as I fell, you spread your hands, and I had a heavy overcoat on, and the overcoat slipped from my shoulders. And that is how I squeezed myself out of my overcoat. And then he was on top of me, and he grabbed my left leg. So I couldn't move anymore. And then I looked around and I started kicking right in the face of right in his face. I didn't stop kicking. Whether I killed him or not, I still don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know, because I ran away now. I ran away from this cancer. So that's the first time that I escaped. There are many more escapes, more or less like that. And when I ended up in France, escaped all these times, I became involved with the OSS. And what I did with the OSS was also incredible.
It was. And I know, because Jack, when I got that email from you today, or I got the email from Scott today, and you were CC'd on it, I think I might have responded to you as Joe. I hope I didn't.
No, you did not.
Okay, good. Because I had Joe on my mind. I was talking to a Joe. But anyhow, I started reading up quickly on your story, and it's unbelievable, your story. It's so fascinating. I don't know how you survived it. And also, I don't know how you even begin to start telling your story, because this is a problem that all veterans I've found face. They have a hard time sharing, something that's really hard to explain, even to people who are close to them. you had so much happen to you, so much trauma. How did you even begin to tell your story to people?
Well, I learned because of not studies, because of what I learned, what really happened in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
I said to myself, I must speak.
That's it.
I must speak. And when I speak, and I did speak to thousands of high school students throughout the United States. And when I start speaking, I say, guys and boys, I speak for those who can't speak anymore.
Mm.
And that has given me the courage of continuing to speak and even write my book. But my book has not, we don't seem to be able to find a publisher. Maybe
what
somebody.
The heck?
Huh?
Are you serious?
I am very serious. We have thus far, the book is written with all the with the counterintelligence training, everything. The landing, I landed in D+2 in Utah Beach. The book is not published yet.
Okay.
It's written. Anyway, maybe something will happen.
Bullshit.
I'd like to talk to you about that. Tell me about this picture, Jack.
These are my two parents. I am sitting in the middle, and these are my two sisters. Of course, none of them have survived. My entire family has been killed by the Germans in a death camp called Sobibor in Poland. I'm the only survivor of an entire generation. And I'm 98 years of age. I can't believe it. But these are my parents and my two sisters.
And they're gone.
And they're gone. Oh. Not only they are gone, all my uncles, my aunts, my cousins, my nephews, my best friends. I'm the only one left.
The only survivor.
I'm the only survivor.
Can you tell us a little bit, just give us a thumbnail of what you did with the OSS when you made it to France?
The OSS, I was working on a farm as a farmhand, and there was in a little village south of Paris called Pont-Fou-en-Brie, and there was the mayor there. For some reason, the mayor thought that I was a spy, except I was a. But anyway, the reason he thought I was a spy because on his farm was an empty well that was dried out, and in that empty well, but hiding the commander of the OSS and a pilot. They were hiding because their whole network had been betrayed and was killed, and they actually needed help. So when I was working in this farm, this mayor came to me in the middle of the night, and my French wasn't that good at the time. He says, come with me. And he led me to his farm. And then I saw what I saw was a haystack or a bunch of bales of hay. And he moved them away, and then I saw a circular wooden plank or wooden thing, which he shoved away. And anyway, this led to the well, and there are two people in there. They were hiding because these were the two OSS. No, one was the OSS man, and one was a pilot. And they were hiding there, and they didn't know what to do. They had no more communications. And they asked me for help, which, of course, I was very happy to do.
Right.
And in the long run, I mean, I'm not going to tell you exactly what I did because I did things that I wasn't too very proud of. On the other hand, I was proud of it because I killed enemies. That's what I did.
Oh, boy.
What they needed is communication with their headquarters back in England, and they needed a radio. And to make a long story short, I found a radio in Paris. What I mean, a radio is a transmitter. A radio can be made into a transmitter. And I found somebody who could transfer or could convert a radio into a transmitter. I smuggled that transmitter from Paris into Corfu, enabling the commander, his code name was Claude, and he was an American, by the way, an American who spoke fluent French. And that enabled Claude to get back to his headquarters, his OSS headquarters in Paris, in London. And to make a long story short, he was eventually called back. And I don't know if you ever heard of moon planes. There were these were British. I can't right now. I'm a little nervous, by the way, which doesn't happen too often because I'm used to speaking to people. But now I don't know. Anyway, he was picked up by an airplane, and I was with him carrying some boxes, or not boxes, but packages. And he jumped into this airplane, or in the belly of the airplane. And then he grabbed me, he took the stuff out of my hands and pulled me inside. And that was the end of my Holocaust.
And you went to Britain?
I went to Britain being interrogated by British intelligence and also by Dutch intelligence, because at the time I was still a Dutch citizen. And if you might remember, at that moment in time, the Dutch Queen was in exile in England.
Yes.
And they demanded that I join their army. And I had absolutely no intention or no desire to join the Dutch army because I was already so Americanized that it wasn't funny anymore. The OSS stopped it. And the OSS, and here comes another incredible story. The OSS sent me to the United States because I wanted to become a pilot. Can you imagine?
No, I can't imagine. I'm showing a picture of you now in the U.S. Army. So you came to the U.S. You wanted to be a pilot.
I wanted to become a pilot, but instead, the United States. No, I joined the army. And then the army decided, no, you're not going to be a pilot. We are sending you to Camp Ritchie. Now, have you ever heard of Camp Ritchie?
You're a Ritchie boy.
I'm a Ritchie boy.
Oh, wow.
No, don't insult me, because the Ritchie boys, we were never called Ritchie boys during the war. It is because of this damn film that was the Ritchie boys that everybody who I'm so mad at that. First of all, we were a secret organization. In the beginning of our existence, we wore armbands, CIC,
yes.
Counterintelligence. You know how we translated that? Christ, I'm confused. That was the American Intelligence Service. Christ, I'm confused.
And Jack, I kid you not, we had this dinner with the 10 heroes of World War II, and there was a bartender, young woman who was bartending bar, and she said, "Are any of these Ritchie boys?"
Oh, we hate it.
So you don't like that term, huh?
Oh, no, no, we were not. It's because of the film.
Yes.
It's because of the film that they called us Richie Boys. And I believe that the actors in that film were actors that were not real CIC people, because I had never heard of them. I never seen anything. And another thing is the film depicted that the CIC consisted predominantly of German Jews.
Right.
Well, I only met two of them in my 4 years with the United States. I only met only two of them. So
right.
All of this BS. I don't know if you know the word BS.
I love it, Jack. This is so great. This is so interesting. Here's another photo. You're in it. It looks like sitting on the back of the Jeep.
Yeah. Do you see the shoulder strap that I have? We used our P-38s under our arm.
Huh. Wow.
You see it?
Yes. Tell us about the work that you did then in Europe. You said you landed in France after your training on D+2 on Utah Beach.
Yeah. That in itself was also incredible, because we were in an LTS. We were 4 to a Jeep. We had about 20 Jeeps, which was the CIC team, right?
Yep.
And we landed, we went into the ocean up approximately up in the Jeep. The Jeep was we put wax on the engine. We had an external exhaust, like almost like a submarine. That's how we landed, and then we found out we landed on the wrong beach because we were supposed to. I believe it was Red Fox something, and apparently what happened is the current, the ocean current, led us away from the original landing strip. And when we landed, there was absolutely no resistance. The Germans were gone. The only thing we saw were dead bodies because of the 2 days before, because there was a heavy fight, of course, at the beginning of the assault. But when we landed, there was nothing.
And here's another picture of you. It says first relieve. This is how I looked 27 days after D-Day, when we took Caen in Normandy.
Well,
for the first.
The British took Caen, but anyway,
okay.
Yeah.
27 days of shelling and so forth.
Yeah.
But you had been used to war. You had known war. You had been in Rotterdam. Rotterdam had been terror bombed, right?
I was in that bombardment.
You were in that bombardment.
Yes.
Could you tell people a little bit about what it was like? I think Americans don't know much about the bombing at Rotterdam.
Well, the bombing of Rotterdam came out of nowhere. It was actually a mistake that the Germans made, because as I understand from after the war and what I learned, is that the Germans wanted an immediate passage through Holland in order to reach Belgium. And they wanted that real fast. And so they said, we will demand surrender. And if you don't surrender, we will bomb Rotterdam. So the Dutch general, I don't know who he was, decided to surrender the Dutch army to the Germans. But that message was mislaid or did not reach the Germans on time. In the interim, the whole bombardment group was already on its way and bombarded, and yet there was a ceasefire.
This is one of the most famous photographs from World War II, and it is a photo of Rotterdam after it had been bombed. You see a city leveled because of the ultimatum. I'm going to ask, you have a compatriot here, a countryman here, George Zwagstra. Hello, George. He lives in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and he has shared his story with us of as a child working in the resistance, the Dutch resistance in World War II. George, have you heard Jack Boke's story before? If you could unmute yourself. No, he says no. Okay.
No, my story is not known in Europe. It's known in the United States, predominantly in the Florida area. I mean, I spoke to so many schools, high school students there, and no, I'm quite well known in Florida, but outside of Florida, no.
Here's a picture that Scott Masters just shared with me here in the chat. This is you here in the blue hat.
Where?
Aren't you? Isn't that you?
No.
Am I sharing this picture? Does anybody see it?
Oh, yes, you're right. That's me.
Is this Remembrance Day, Scott Masters?
Yeah, that was Remembrance Day 2019. Jack was one of many vets who came out that morning.
And he has met with your class and been interviewed by your class several years ago, right?
Yeah, I think that was 2018, if I remember correctly. And it was absolutely fascinating. We kept the kids in for a big part of their lunch, and he ended up doing an hour and a half with them. And we made them all late for their next class.
I bet they were their jaws were just slack-jawed. I mean, I bet they were just amazed at what they were hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very unique story, and Jack tells it really well. He's a very dramatic storyteller in the classroom. They enjoyed it a lot.
I wonder, do we have anybody? I mean, there's so much to your story, Jack. We have like 7 minutes left in this program for tonight. I just want to make sure that if people have specific questions for you, I don't know if Carol is still on, because Carol's in-laws live it. There you are, Carol. Yeah.
I heard. It's amazing.
Yeah, Carol,
Oh my
please.
gosh. Yeah. So such an incredible story that my father-in-law shares. He was a child when the Germans came to Holland. They lived in the north of Holland in a town called Winschoten near Groningen. Jack, if perhaps you know those places.
Well, I know where it is, but I've been out of Holland since I'm 16 years old, actually.
I see. Yeah.
Carol, I'm just going to interrupt you now. I'm sorry. I want you to tell your story. I just see George Zwagstra, who lives in Halifax now, but he's from Northern Holland. I just saw him nod his head. Yes. He knows the town of your in-laws. George, do you know where she's talking about?
Yes, pretty well. I've been in Winschoten a few times. So yeah, I know where it is.
Yeah, so when the Germans came into Winschoten to take over the town, they looked for the biggest house that was situated well, and they decided to take over my father-in-law's house. At that point, he was a child. And they gave the entire family less than 4 hours to take whatever they needed, move it out of the house, and vacate. In that time, my father-in-law's dad knew he was actually a leader in the Dutch resistance, and therefore had dozens of resistance rifles in their attic hidden. He knew that if the Germans found these rifles, the entire family would be killed. And so what happened was, in those hours when they had to vacate, the adults were being searched. Everything they brought out of the house, their pots, their pans, their clothing, the adults were being searched head to toe, but the children were not. So the 4 children had to carry the resistance rifles out of the house, hidden between bed sheets, and pretend that there was nothing wrong. In fact, I'm getting goosebumps as I tell the story.
Yeah.
Because it was so frightening for these children. They knew what was at risk. They knew that all of their lives were at risk. If any of them was caught, if they tripped, if they fell, if a bed sheet, slipped and the rifles were visible, they would have been killed in that instant. And so the stakes were so high that my father-in-law to this day, and he's 90 years old, it is probably one of the most meaningful, vivid, scary stories of his entire life, to have survived and have been able to secret all of those rifles out of the house right in front of the Gestapo watching them.
Yeah.
What
Sounds
a story.
familiar.
Ken Kazak, you put a really good question in the chat here. If you want to unmute yourself and ask it, because Jack would have been in Europe when Operation Market Garden happened in September 1944, a disaster for the Allied airborne. Ken, do you want to ask it?
Sure. Jack, every time I hear a story, I say I'm not going to hear a more interesting one, and you're number one so far, so thank you. But what were your opinions about Operation Market Garden?
Well, I don't know if there are any British people in the audience here.
Scott Masters is our honorary British person because he lives in Canada.
You're putting me on the spot.
Yeah.
Well, we GIs, we were all GIs. We didn't have a very high regard of the British, especially that the Montgomery, who was hated by General Eisenhower, who was hated by Patton, who was hated by most Americans, and they were always slow. And Market Garden, of course, I was not in Market Garden. I was when that happened, I was already in Nuremberg, involved, by the way, with the war crimes trials. But what did I think about it? It was a disaster. It was the same disaster as was also initiated by the British. Was Dieppe. Was also a disaster. So I hope I answered it as vaguely as I could.
No, that's very diplomatic, Jack. You would have made a great diplomat. That's great.
Yeah, it should have been. Yeah.
Jack, I cannot tell you what just a more than a pleasure. It's an honor just to be in your company here on Zoom and to hear just a little tiny bit of your story. Glenn Flickinger is the host of one of our programs that focuses on World War II, Greatest Generation Live. He and I are going to email you and try and find a date where we can get you on and really unfold as much of your story as we can in 90 minutes, because I think
I would be happy, most happy to do that.
Thank you so much. And I think you gave us just a little taste of it, just a tiny little taste of it tonight. I do want to let people know that we will be back next Monday night. That will be Labor Day. We don't take off Labor Day. Do you know why? Because for me, this ain't work. I love this stuff.
So Todd, will you contact me so that I can participate?
You bet. Yes,
Okay.
Jack, absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna make sure that you're on our list and you get our emails and with the links, and it's always the same link. It's always the link that you use tonight, but we always send it out every week.
Yeah, but I have to be invited, right?
No, you don't have to be invited. You just show up and crash the party. Yeah.
But will there be a sign on my iPad that or what?
I will send you an email.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'll send you an email.
My email, Todd.
I do have your email. Yep.
Okay.
I have it.
Wonderful.
I will have it, and I'm going to send you an email right when we get off tonight, just because I also want your address. I want to send you something in the mail. So next Monday night at 7 p.m., we're doing a program on the Mobile Riverine Force, the Joint Army Navy operation that started in 1967 in the Mekong Delta in Vietnam. We're going to have some mobile riverine, including Cliff. Cliff, you're going to be joining us. You're going to be a star.
Thanks.
Get no pressure or anything, but we're going to hear Cliff's story. We're going to hear other veterans who served in the Mobile Riverine Force, and also having on documentary filmmakers who are producing a documentary about the Mobile Riverine Force. So please do join us. We'll send you out a reminder about this. This will be Labor Day night next Monday. We are doing a trip for the 225th birthday of the USS Constitution, October 20th through 24th. Some
Right.
people are flying with us from Pittsburgh. Some people are driving from Pittsburgh. Some people are meeting us in Boston from other places. Any way you want to get there, we'd love to have you. You could come as part of our trip or just separately and we could meet you there, whatever you want to do. We are having a special event at the USS Constitution Museum on the birthday, October 21st. It'll be a Veterans Breakfast Club event where we have veterans who served on the Constitution, which is still a commissioned Navy ship, talking about their service. We have a blood drive, you know about that. Donate blood, and Veterans Breakfast Club gets $15 for it. Use the special code D062. You can buy coffee on our website. Here's the one thing I want to mention is we do publish a quarterly magazine. And I somehow am having a vision of Jack's story being in our future magazine. We're putting our next magazine together right now, our fall magazine. This is our summer. We send this out to about 7,500 households for free.
Wow.
Anybody who wants to receive it, we send it to. If
Wow.
you don't receive it, it's because we don't have your address. Please let us know your address. If you don't receive this in the mail, we'd be happy to send you one. We'd be happy to send you 50, because this is the advertising that we do. These get passed hand to hand. This is how people learn about what our programs like we're meeting tonight. Our next magazine, I just was working very hard on it today, and this is not the cover. I'm going to show you the picture. I'm going to show you is not the cover. It's a mock-up of the cover that I sent to Ellie. And I said, can you do something like this? This is what looks to be Sandra Ortega. You know her. She's been on our program. She shared her story. She's going to be our cover girl for our next issue of our fall VBC magazine. And you can see some of the stories that we'll be sharing in that issue. So if you don't get the magazine, you can just email me, Todd, Todd, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. Hey, so Cliff, you're on for tomorrow, next week. You know that, right? Okay. Get your helmet strap ready. And
I've got a real good helmet story for you, so I'll save it for next week.
Okay, very good. We'll get a helmet story. This is so, Carol, thank you for sticking with us for all evening. It's such a pleasure to have you. And thank you all. Oh, before we go, actually, I know I'm a little over, but Dawn Hawkins, I have not met you before. Dawn, you put something in the chat. I want to make sure that you introduce yourself here to our group. Did Don disappear? I think he disappeared. I called him out and he disappeared. All right, we'll get Don next time. All right, everybody.
He pushed the wrong button.
I did. Maybe I bet he pushed the wrong button. Either that or he made a fast getaway. All right, everybody. Good night. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next week.